James had worked night shifts at Pinebrook Gas Station for 3 years. It wasn't the most exciting job, but the solitude suited him. The station was at the edge of town, with nothing but a long stretch of road on one side and thick woods on the other. The nights were usually predictable. A handful of customers, mostly truckers or light-night wanderers, stopping to refuel and grab coffee before disappearing into the darkness. That night, the air was heavy, the kind that made the silence feel alive. The shift had started uneventful, a few customers, just the occasional trucker stopping for gas. It was around 2:33 a.m. when James noticed something strange. The security cameras flickered. The front lot, empty a second ago, now showed a black sedan parked by Pump 4. But James hadn't heard it pull in. He stepped outside, feeling the cold press against his skin. The car was running, its headlights off. As he approached, he saw a figure in the driver's seat, motionless. James tapped on the window. "Hey, you okay?" The man turned his head slowly. His face was pale, eyes sunken, lips cracked. Then he grinned too wide, as if his skin might tear. James took a step back. The man raised a single finger to his lips, signaling for silence. James hurried back inside, locking the door behind him. He watched the monitor. The man was still there. Then, in the reflection of the store window, James saw something move behind him. A shape, impossibly tall and thin, stood at the far aisle. It hadn't been there before. James spun around, but the aisle was empty. His heart pounded. He checked the cameras again. The car was gone. Suddenly, the store lights flickered, buzzing erratically. The radio at the counter crackled to life with a distorted voice whispering, "You saw him. Now he sees you." James grabbed his phone, but the screen was static. Then came the knock. Not on the door, but from inside the stockroom. Slowly, he turned. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, the darkness seemed thicker than it should be. A pair of hands, pale and skeletal, gripped the doorframe. James stumbled backward, knocking over a rack of candy bars. His breath came in short, panicked gasps. The hands retreated into the darkness, but the stockroom door remained open, an invitation or a warning. The lights flickered again. A faint scraping sound echoed from the back of the store, like nails against tile. James strained his ears, trying to pinpoint the source. Then, whispering, his name, James. The voice was soft but wrong. It carried through the aisles like a breeze, touching every corner of the store. He fought the urge to run, knowing instinctively that movement might provoke whatever was in there with him. Instead, he reached under the counter, fingers trembling, and pulled out the small, rusted revolver that had been sitting there for years. Something shifted in the shadows beyond the stockroom. James aimed at the darkness, his hands slick with sweat. The silence stretched, heavy and oppressive. Then, a footstep. A single, deliberate step forward. James squeezed the trigger. The gun clicked. Empty. The shadows surged forward. The power cut out. James never made it out of Pinebrook Gas Station that night. The morning shift arrived to find the store empty, his belongings untouched. The security footage? Corrupted. But for a single frame, James, staring into the camera, his eyes wide with horror, and behind him, a shadow stretching too far, too thin. A week later, a new employee was assigned to the night shift. The manager never spoke of James again. But some nights, when the store was empty and the lights flickered, a whisper could be heard in the aisles. A voice, soft and wrong, calling a name. James. Epilogue 2 months later, a drifter named Kyle stopped at Pinebrook Gas Station. He had been driving all night and needed gas and a snack. The moment he stepped inside, a chill ran down his spine. The store felt wrong. The air was thick, unmoving, and he could hear the faintest hum, like a radio signal caught between stations. He walked to the counter and found the new night shift worker, a young woman, maybe in her early 20s. Her eyes were tired, but there was something else. A deep, unshakable unease. Kyle grabbed a bottle of water and a bag of chips. When he set them on the counter, the radio behind the clerk crackled. Static. A whisper. Kyle barely caught it, but he swore it said, "He sees you." The clerk's face went pale. She grabbed his arm. "You should go," she whispered. Now, Kyle hesitated. Then the store lights flickered, just for a second. But in that moment, in the reflection of the freezer doors, he saw something standing at the far end of the store. Tall, thin, watching. Kyle didn't say another word. He left his things on the counter, bolted to his car, and sped off into the night. Behind him, in the gas station, the radio whispered again. "James,